All right. And there will definitely be time for questions and answers. I just want to please ask that everyone keep themselves muted until we get to the sharing portion of the program. I'll let you know when we're going to do that, just to eliminate any unnecessary background noise. Also, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to drop those in the chat box. Just to refresh your memory on where that is, that's going to be at the bottom of your screen. There's going to be a little icon that says chat. Feel free to drop any questions there, or if you want to unmute yourself or raise your hand or somehow indicate to me that you have a question, that's fine as well. So I think that's it for the housekeeping items. Oh, one more thing. There will be just a couple of quick questions at the end of the presentation that we're going to put up on the screen in poll format. So if you could please just make sure you answer those two questions before you go. That's how we make sure that we're offering the best quality educational opportunities for all of you. So that said, we're going to get started. Really excited to see all of you joining us this morning. My name is Amanda Kaczurka. I work for Decision Associates as an associate consultant with our talent and organizational performance practice. And I'm going to share my screen here. I've got our PowerPoint presentation ready to go. So let me get rid of this lovely presenter view. All right, so jumping right in, we are going to cover a lot of ground today. So it's maybe going to feel a little bit like drinking from a fire hose at points, and that's okay. That's why we're going to give you the recordings at the end of the series so you can rewatch and digest the information. But we want to really give you as much information as possible to help you navigate this recruitment race and the challenges that are coming along with it. So just to give you a sense of what we're going to cover today, we're going to set the stage a little bit and help you understand, what does the current picture look like, as well as where we're headed from here. We also want to hear from all of you and what you're seeing and what your challenges have been as you've tried to find and retain talent over the last couple of years, especially. And then after we cover the current picture and how things are going currently and what's projected over the next, couple of years, we're going to share at a very high level what you can do about it, some of the steps that you can start to take. And I say it's a high level because actually over the following two sessions 2 and 3, happening over the next couple of weeks, we're really going to dig a lot deeper into those areas and share with you some actionable steps and tactics that you can employ right away within your organization to help some of these challenges that you've been experiencing. And then, of course, we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. But again, as I mentioned, if you have questions throughout the presentation, don't hesitate to drop them in the chat. So a little bit about Decision Associates for any of you who are not familiar with our firm, and I know we do have some clients on the call today, so welcome to all of you, and to those who've not worked with us before, we're excited to have some new faces. So a little bit about Decision Associates was founded in 1984 by Dawn Moore, who is in the top row, second person from the right-hand side. And Dawn recently turned ownership of the firm over to Aaron Phillips, who is third in from the left in that photo. And so the services that we offer really span a large gamut of different areas. And so we do the practice that I work in, which is the talent and organizational performance practice. We do a lot with executive recruitment, organizational development, training and development, culture work, things like that. But then there are other practices within the firm as well that work on areas like marketing and sales. Dawn and another staff member, BJ Lechner, handle the mergers and acquisitions portion of the firm. We all do strategic planning, and then there's some succession planning services as well. You can see the list of our services there on the right-hand side of the screen. And then I also think it's important to share our vision and our mission. And so the vision that we have for Decision Associates is that we will be the preferred business advisor for progressively minded for-profit and nonprofit organizations that demonstrate the desire to be best in class. And so what does that mean, right? We're looking to work with organizations who recognize that, the way things have always been done is not necessarily the way that they should continue to be done. And so they're constantly looking to improve and change and evolve. And so those are the types of organizations that we really look for in our clients. And we are working to achieve this vision by challenging our clients to be the best that they can be. So a lot of times when clients will bring us in to work on projects, we're asking tough questions and really getting to the heart of what the issues are that they're experiencing. And we take a teach them to fish approach with the services that we provide, in that, we're not creating a situation where you're then dependent upon Decision Associates to succeed into the future. We want to help you, teach you, and make sure you're learning how to help yourselves through the challenges that you experience. So that's a little bit about the firm. Now a little bit about me. So I've been with Decision Associates for a little over a year. My background prior to that was in economic development and marketing, primarily spanning a few different industries. I've worked in higher education, spent a lot of time in the nonprofit sector, and then my family business is a retail establishment down in Meadville that I've spent many, many years working in. And so I'm married to my husband. That's the two of us in the upper left-hand corner there at the Grand Ole Opry last year. So we love to travel and spend time with our family and friends. I do sit on a few different boards here in the Erie area, the Foundation for Erie's Public Schools, as well as the Mercyhurst Institute for Arts and Culture. And then I manage a food truck festival down in Meadville, which is coming up here in a little over a week. And the money that's raised through that event goes toward a fund that we started in my mom's name. My mom passed in 2014 from cancer. And so we raise money to support the cost of nutritional counseling for patients undergoing treatment at the Cancer Center in Meadville. So I will be talking a lot with you today, again, just about my own experiences in recruitment. That's the main function that I have here on the Decision Associates team. I spend a lot of time reviewing applications, sourcing candidates, interviewing candidates, and really helping them find a good match with our client organizations, and helping our client organizations find good matches in the candidates that we present to them. So that's a little about me. And as you probably noticed on the registration form, there was a second presenter mentioned, and Elizabeth Cipolla, who is another member of the Decision Associates team, will actually be presenting the next two sessions. So I wanted her to introduce herself as well. So Elizabeth?
Sure. I'll just take about 30 seconds to say that the adjectives on the bottom screen describe who I am to a T. And if you're interested in more of the straightforward professional credentialing side of getting to know who I am, that can be found on the screen to your right. But we'll be spending quite a bit of time together for the next two sessions, and we're really excited to have you here with us.
Great, thank you. And then I think it's also important to acknowledge the rest of the, as we refer to ourselves, the top team, talent and organizational performance. We do have the rest of our team members on the call here today. So real quick, I'm going to just have each of them say hello. Julie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, hi, my name's Julie Hayes. I'm a sourcing specialist here at the Decision Associates.
Oh, sounds like Julie's having some connection issues. Carmen.
Good morning. I'm Carmen Phillips. I'm one of the sourcing specialists. Very good to have you all with us this morning. Thank you.
And Renee.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Renee Thayer, and I'm also a sourcing specialist with Decision Associates. And I'm really happy to have you guys join us this morning.
Great, thank you. So Julie, Renee, and Carmen make up the sourcing team for the talent and organizational practice. And they, if you do any executive recruitment work with us, you will hear from them frequently. They do a lot of our sourcing for finding passive job seekers and candidates to who might be a good fit for the positions that we're looking to fill. So that's the team. And now we're going to jump right in to all of this information that I have to share with you today. So I'm going to preface this by saying the current picture is not sunny and bright, right? I think we all know that. I think we've all been experiencing a lot of different challenges when it comes to recruitment and retention. So probably none of the things that I'm going to share with you in these first couple slides are necessarily going to be a surprise. And I do ask that you bear with the sort of cloudy outlook that we have, because it will get better. I can guarantee that at the end of the presentation, I've got lots of tactics and suggestions to help you combat the situation that we're in currently. So first and foremost, Bureau of Labor Statistics put out a study or a report recently that said, 4.4 million people quit their jobs in February of 2022. I'm sure many of you experienced that, whether it was, you yourself left a position to go somewhere else, or you're working in an organization that lost employees as well. Additionally, in a study done by SHRM, that's the Society of Human Resource Management, in late 2021, showed that more than 40% of United States workers are currently actively seeking a new job or plan to do so soon. And so one of the things in my recent attendance at the SHRM Talent Conference, which is a great annual conference that SHRM puts on dedicated to talent acquisition and retention, we saw this shift of, yes, the great resignation, certainly lots of people leaving their jobs, but also important to acknowledge the great reassessment. And so even what we mean by that is that even though people aren't necessarily leaving their jobs, a lot of people are really thinking about it. They're at least reassessing what they want out of their work. Is the industry that they've been in for years something they want to continue in? So if not resigning, definitely reassessing. And that's an important fact to be mindful of as we move forward through this presentation. Resignation rates are highest among ages 30 to 45. That was another study that was released by Vizier Insights. This graph is just showing kind of where the current pain point is, meaning that, we have more open jobs than unemployed people. And unfortunately, we're going to continue on a trajectory that is not necessarily conducive to filling those open positions. And I'll get into that in just a minute. Additionally, there's been an uneven impact on from a gender perspective with, 2 million women leaving the workforce. And that was for a variety of reasons, during and just after the height of the pandemic related shutdowns. That could be everything from childcare, and that gets into, availability of childcare, expense of childcare, could be elder care. Also, women were disproportionately affected by, job cuts and positions being eliminated. And so it's actually estimated that about 1 million women will not return to the workforce in the foreseeable future, or possibly even ever, as we progress further past the height of the pandemic shutdowns. And an interesting statistic, I just sat through a webinar the other day presented by a gentleman named Tim Sackett, who does a lot of presentations for SHRM. And he shared actually this graph that I thought was really interesting. And so he made the point that, Japan actually started to see some of the same issues that we're seeing now with a labor shortage years ago. In the early 1980s, they had a consistent and significant drop in their fertility rate. And so they are producing fewer humans, which means there are fewer humans to take jobs, down the line. So the reason that I bring this up is because we are on a very similar trajectory. We aren't growing enough humans. We know the birth rate is down. We've seen those statistics. We aren't immigrating enough humans. This chart here on the left illustrates that. Visas were restricted because of the pandemic, so we saw a significant decline there. There's also some political factors there. So we're not seeing as many new people coming into the country. We also have significant retirement rates. We're seeing the baby boomers retiring en masse. By 2030, the youngest boomers will be at traditional retirement age. And so all of this is really pointing to we have far more jobs than we have humans to fill them. And so one solution that Tim presented the other day was that, not from a political standpoint, but just from a job standpoint, we need massive immigration reform to help combat the issues that are only going to continue to worsen. We need that influx of people into our job market in order to help fill some of these positions. And he's not by any stretch saying that that's going to be, the be all end all solution. It's not. He said, even if we would get 1 million immigrants in, that's not going to solve the problem, but it will at least help. Additionally, I think it's important to point out that we had a resignation problem long before the pandemic began. This chart here on the left shows the average monthly quit statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And you can see that actually during the pandemic, there was a pause in resignation. If you look at where we were projected to be in 2020, we missed that mark somewhat significantly, just because people were unsure of what was going to be happening. And so they decided, well, I was thinking of quitting, but I'm not going to do that now because I just don't know what's going to happen. And that sense of insecurity and not knowing what was going to be next prevented people from leaving. But then as they started looking at the change in lifestyle that they maybe had, throughout the pandemic, I think that became a factor. And so they started to reassess what they wanted out of their work relationship. And that's where we started to see us get back on, not a great track to be back on, but unfortunately back on the track of, that projected quit path. Additionally, the factors that we're attributing to this pre-pandemic, things like retirement, we already knew that we had a lot of baby boomers that were going to be retiring. And the pandemic just exacerbated a few of those factors. Relocation, we saw, lots of people leaving large metropolitan areas to move to smaller towns, where there weren't so many people packed in together. Reconsidering their work-life balance and the care roles that were expected of them, whether that was with children, elderly relatives, parents. A lot of people are also looking at reshuffling and determining, hey, I've been in this particular industry, in this profession for so many years. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go do something else. So they're leaving and not necessarily physically leaving a geographic location, but leaving a particular industry. I think additionally, an important stat, and we're going to get into this top one a little bit more in actually session 3, where 85% of Great Resignation participants, so people who've left their jobs over the last couple of years, said that they left a manager, not a company. And so our third session is going to talk about management for retention, because we know that managers are one of your first lines of defense against essentially hemorrhaging employees. And so how are you preparing your managers to really take an active role in ensuring that your employees are feeling a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, a sense of engagement with your organization? Pre-pandemic, it was just over 70% saying that they were leaving a manager. So that statistic has definitely risen, though, not super drastically. Some other reasons that were cited for leaving: toxic company culture, low salary, lack of healthy work-life boundaries, and not allowing remote work. Additionally, those who have gone through a structured and meaningful onboarding process, and when I say meaningful, that's not just, here's your paperwork, you spend your entire first day filling out paperwork, and then you sit at your desk saying, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing. I think we've probably all gone through onboarding processes like that. So, an engaging process where they're meeting lots of people within the organization and developing an understanding of their purpose as part of the team and what the organization's mission, vision, values are overall on a deeper level. So making sure that that onboarding process is meaningful. Those who go through a process like that are over 65% more likely to stay with their employer. And then related to additional training and development, SHRM put out a study that said 50% of executives fail within 18 months without proper leadership training. 33 of them fail to establish key relationships, and 31% fail to align with company culture. And so again, it goes back to not just the onboarding process, pre-boarding as well, but their duration as managers throughout your organization. How are you equipping them with the knowledge that they need to be able to perform at a level that's consistent, not only with your mission, vision, and values, but also in a way that's engaging to the rest of the team? Ernst & Young did a study that showed, and this is getting into the topic of flexibility a little bit, 54% of respondents said that they would actually prefer having flexibility on when they work, and 40% said they wanted flexibility in where they work. So if you think about the when and where, especially people who are maybe have children or who are caring for other people, other than themselves, those schedules can get a little tricky sometimes with doctor's appointments, childcare availability, and even those who aren't caring for somebody and who it's just themselves. Maybe there's, volunteer work that's really important to them, or maybe they have medical challenges that they have appointments to attend. And so having some flexibility, not just on where they work, but when, if it's, okay, I need to put more time in first thing in the morning from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then finish my day later in the afternoon into the evening, just understanding that some people do need that flexibility in the hours that they're working as well. And so tying into this, SHRM looked at Americans who are participating in the gig economy. And for those who aren't familiar with that concept, it's people who aren't tied as an employee to one particular organization. They work for themselves. They move from project to project. And the level of flexibility that gives them is really, in the areas not just of where and when they're working, it's the what and how too. They have complete control over what projects they're working on, who they're working with, when they're working, why they're working. It clears up more opportunity for them to take on projects that they're passionate about. And we've seen this firsthand in some of the recruiting projects that we've taken on. We had a candidate for a marketing position just within the last year, and she was a great candidate, really, really solid. And we liked her a lot, and the client liked her a lot too. And we got toward the final interview, and she said, I've had a chance to reflect on this, and I just think that, in the last 6 or so months, I've started going out on my own, doing my own thing. And I'm finding that I really enjoy it. I have so much freedom. I have complete control of my schedule. And so she withdrew from the process because she was enjoying that control, that flexibility that she had so much, she didn't want to lose it. And so this study that SHRM put out is showing that 36% of Americans are participating in the gig economy currently. And if we continue on the current trajectory, it'll be at 50%, half within the next 5 years. So you need to think about how you can incorporate a greater level of control and flexibility into, and again, that's not just translating to remote work, but how can you incorporate that flexibility into your team as well? 70% of employees are inclined to quit their current job to work for a company that invests in employee development and learning. So we've definitely seen an increase, and we've even seen this as decision associates as we've been talking with candidates about positions that we're hiring for. Sometimes the questions that we get are related to what development opportunities are available. Would there be training provided? Would there be the opportunity to get credentials? What are those learning opportunities looking like? So then in that same study, they also said, we looked at a pool of people who recently changed jobs, and 34% of them said professional advancement attracted them to this new position that they have. So learning, again, extremely, extremely important for the candidate experience. The last piece that I'll share with you before we go into some audience participation is that having a talent acquisition strategy that's really up to date with the current situations that we're all dealing with related to the labor market is incredibly important. However, a recent study by McLean and Company showed that only 38% of organizations reported having a documented talent acquisition strategy at all, updated or otherwise. So that's really, really low. And I think a lot of times organizations take the approach of, we have a fire, meaning we've got all these open positions, there's work that's not being done, there's responsibilities that are falling through the cracks. How do we, we're just throwing spaghetti at a wall to see what sticks and to try to find a quick solution. And that's not sustainable, right? It's also frustrating for everybody involved because it doesn't work. Or if it does work, it works for a very brief time. And so it's just not sustainable long-term for your organization. So that's the first section of the presentation. Elizabeth, I want to just toss it over to you real quick to see if there's anything else you wanted to add.
I would just be curious, actually, and people can feel free to just type it in the chat box, but I'm just curious how many of you on this call right now with us today would say that you have a true talent acquisition strategy. And just to be clear, a talent acquisition strategy is not, oh yeah, our strategy is that we post for positions and we screen candidates and we interview them and then we hire them. That's not a talent acquisition strategy. Amanda, well, if you could just take 2 seconds to maybe quickly explain what a talent acquisition strategy is in the context that you mean it. I think that would help people be able to answer the question that I posed for them to put in the chat box.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about a talent acquisition strategy, and I actually think calling it a talent acquisition strategy is maybe a little bit misleading because really it should address acquisition and retention. So overall, you're looking at start to finish, how are we attracting employees to work with our organization and how are we keeping them here? So that's looking at not just, where you're posting jobs and when, it's also what's included in that job posting and how are you talking about the positions that are available, but it's also bigger picture, right? Thinking about how you're branding your organization as an employer. What are the stories that you're sharing to entice people to work there? Also, how are you talking with your existing employees about their experiences working for the organization? And are you giving them the fuel to be able to promote that to their friends, family, people that they may know that could work for the organization? It's also, attaching responsibility and accountability to various people within your organization who can all help with these retention and recruitment efforts. And that's not just, I have this on a slide in a little bit, but it's not just human resources. The recruitment and retention problems that we're seeing right now, this is not an HR problem. This is an everyone problem. And so it really does require you as an organization and your leadership team getting together and talking about who's responsible for what, how can we better equip everyone to be part of this overall attraction and retention strategy. Anything else that you want to mention, Elizabeth, that I'm missing there?
No, I think you did great.
All right, very good. So I would like to hear from a few of you. If you want to, as Elizabeth said, drop it in the chat, or if you want to just quickly unmute yourself and share, what are some of the things that you're all seeing, some of the challenges or roadblocks that you've been experiencing as you've tried to navigate filling these open positions or keeping your employees? Don't be shy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Erin Beam. One of the biggest problems that we're having right now is when we do get new hires, they seem to have a lot of requests immediately about time off. And everyone is kind of in a mode that we're scared people are going to leave. So then we give time off when we normally wouldn't. And then we have a culture problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an all around cycle of trying to retain our new hires, but yet we almost feel like we've let the ball out of our court because we still need to maintain structure and accountability. So I don't necessarily know if this is it's part of the recruiting problem too, because when we screen candidates, we're just seeing a pattern of basically having people tell us what they want, when they want to work, how they want to work, and what they want to work. And I don't know if anyone else is experiencing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are that struggle for control. I think I'm just looking in the chat too. Tried to hire people for the same position, but they had offers elsewhere as a nonprofit. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, and we're going to get into this, and some of you might, for the subsequent sessions, and some of you might think, and I read all the comments that everybody just mentioned so far in the chat box as well. And you might think what I'm about to say is too pie in the sky, but it really isn't. What we are seeing, and we're on the front lines, we're seeing it, and we're also trying to stay on top of and ahead of the trends by, staying engaged with employers, not just regionally, but also nationally and even globally. And what we're seeing is the difference in your ability to attract and compete isn't just tied to compensation. I want to make sure everyone hears this. So even if you're a nonprofit and you feel like you just can't compete, the culture that you have, the flexibility that you are able to offer, and really, reimagining what the employment experience looks like and being extremely intentional in how you market that, not just to candidates, but also to existing employees. That's really where your power lies to be competitive, to be honest. It's not just compensation. I can tell you 1,000 examples of people who are throwing referral bonuses out there and they're like, but I don't get it. It's not working. So there's more to it than what you might think, if that makes any sense. And we're going to I hear your frustration, but we're going to get into more depth about those sorts of things in the next 2 sessions.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I would also say it's a matter of being proactive. So knowing that there's a lot of these issues happening as you try to bring new employees into the organization, how are you thinking proactively about, okay, so we bring this person in, and in our experience, we've had a lot of people asking about flexibility options in a variety of manners. So how are you then incorporating that and flexing your strategy to accommodate for those things? And how are you thinking, 3 steps ahead about, okay, so if somebody comes to us and says, well, I want this flexibility here and there, what's your prepared response? How are you thinking ahead of time about how to address those questions? And so, as Elizabeth mentioned, we're going to go into that in much greater detail over the next 2 sessions. But that's really good feedback. I appreciate that. Marina, thank you for waiting patiently. You've had your hand up. What would you like to share?
Oh, that's okay. So for one, thanks so much for even hosting something like this where we're able to communicate in a safe spot about what we are observing. Luckily, I have the privilege of being connected with tens and tens of companies. So right now we're currently in relations with about 35 companies in the area. So we're able to see all of those things that everyone is expressing right now. I just want to affirm that you are not alone. Your next door neighbor is experiencing the exact same thing as you are. The best way I really can compare this market is if you guys remember in the 50s, right? You quit a job, You could walk down the road and get another job and start the next day, right? So it's a very similar market, just like there's a housing market with buyers and sellers, right? It's like a candidate market now, right? They're in control, like you all keep expressing, and it can be very frustrating. Every year, my company does this national survey. It's called Voices of the Blue Collar Worker, and yes, sure, number one is obviously going to be about pay. I think in the Erie area, we've seen a huge change, right? We went from really strongholding that national minimum at $7.25, and now all of a sudden we're all 14, 15, 16 for just entry level roles. So it's been a huge change for our microeconomy for sure. But second place came in as job security, which was kind of crazy to us. So all those like long-term incentives that you guys are talking about, like, do we have benefits? These candidates are looking for those things. You know, what is the end goal of me being a part of your team? Am I joining a team, or am I just a number in your company? So just be mindful of those things. We see the highest level of retention success with companies with great culture. So just to reaffirm all those things, just remember you're not alone. I would definitely say timeliness is really big right now. There's not really that luxury of getting 10 candidates at a time and picking the best one. Sometimes you have to get 3 and try one of them out and just take that risk. It's a different market now than what we've ever experienced. And that just means that as recruiters, as onboarding specialists, we just need to be mindful that it's just not the same as it's ever been before. So change as much as you can and just adapt and then just repeat, right? Modify, adapt, and repeat. That's all I can say.
Great, thanks, Marina. We'll do one more question. So Melissa, you've got your hand up.
Thanks. And I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but one question I have and a concern and struggle is, when we have staff who leave, often it's, because they did find something better, even if we are doing everything right, in a sense. But it always, like for me, it always feels like failure. Like I must have not done something right, or, there's this other place that's better, but we don't have to keep people until they're 65 years old. Like that's also not a reality. And so I just wondered if, if you will talk about that at all, but in the strategy, if there is something about what are our goals for keeping people? Like, is it for 40 years or is it for 5 or whatever that is? Because I don't think that's good for me to just every time somebody leaves, even if they were with us for 6 years, then I'm feeling like I'm doing something wrong,
Sure. Yeah, that's really hard on your mental health, right? So, so yes, the short answer is yes, we will be talking about that. I think where you're going to find a lot of strategies to help with this is actually in the third session when we talk a lot about managing for retention. So Elizabeth actually has a toolkit that she's going to be walking everyone through that shows you step by step how can you engage as a manager and teach your other managers how to engage with their team members in a way that encourages them to be very open and honest about what they want, not just out of their time with your organization, but out of their career as a whole. And so then you can start to have a better understanding of, okay, well, we brought this person on in this position, but actually there's potential for them to take on other roles or other responsibilities here. But also sometimes it's a very honest conversation and a look at, what, maybe this isn't the right fit for you. And that's okay, because you're still helping them develop in their careers and recognize, what they want out of their work life balance and what they want out of their career path.
And I'll just say, not only will I be walking you through the toolkit, but I'll also be sending it to you to use as well at your organization.
Yeah, great. All right, so thank you all for sharing. I appreciate that. And I know you'll find a lot of additional help within the subsequent 2 sessions that we're going to be offering. So a quick look at where we're headed from here. So I wish I had better news for you, but unfortunately I don't. The labor force participation rate, it's projected to continue to trend downward. It's been declining. We're going to see, continued decline, especially as baby boomers are retiring and we've got a declining population. The number of people available to work, as I said, it's not going to get any better. As I mentioned earlier, the youngest boomers are going to reach traditional retirement age by 2030. And so it's past time actually, to start looking at broadening your recruitment scope. So looking at other groups that maybe your organization has not specifically targeted in the past. Immigrants and refugees, younger workers, people who have had justice system involvement, those who are neurodivergent, who have, and other populations who are historically underrepresented. I think taking time to really put a concentrated effort into reaching additional groups of people who may not have been reached by your traditional job promotion methods and your traditional talent acquisition strategy. This is where we're talking about, really flexing that strategy to accommodate the situation that we're in now, and frankly, that we're going to be in for years to come. So it's really past time to also look at incorporating diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging into the very fabric of your organization, and then subsequently making it part of your recruitment and retention strategy. But again, this is an area where I'm going to stress the importance of being intentional with this process. That's a word that we use a lot here at Decision Associates, intentional. Offering lip service in the form of, oh yeah, we've got a DEIB policy and it's great and everybody loves it. That's not enough. It has to be woven through every aspect of your organization. So it's very apparent to anyone coming into your organization that this is a priority. This is something that this organization is taking very seriously. And that will help you to attract those groups of people who maybe have not been attracted to your organization in the past. Additionally, recruitment marketing continues to be extremely important. Candidates have plenty of options to choose from. So what makes you stand out? Have you developed that unique value proposition? And this is where my marketing background really comes in handy, is that, I've spent plenty of years working with organizations to help market their products to their customers. How are you marketing your organization to potential employees and frankly to your current employees? Because when you think about your employer brand, it's really whenever somebody is asked the question, oh, I noticed you work for Decision Associates. What's it like to work there? The answer that they give is the embodiment of your employer brand. So do you know what they're saying? Is what they're saying what you want them to be saying? And how are you getting involved in the development of that messaging? You also need to be creating a culture of recruitment, meaning, are you empowering your entire team to be recruiters? Are you looking at, giving them the tools that they need to promote open positions and talk in a way that's consistent with your mission, vision, and values about their experience as an employee? Additionally, are you creating a culture of retention? Are you providing proper training to your managers, taking a genuine interest in your team and their goals and development? Are you fostering opportunities for connection and building a sense of belonging? Because again, when people don't feel a sense of belonging to an organization, they're going to leave every time. So especially now we're seeing with remote teams where people are, we saw that statistic earlier, 85% of people who left during the Great Resignation left a manager. Well, now we're starting to see people leaving managers because they don't know them. They haven't had an opportunity to meet them in person, to spend some time with them. And that's just as much of a risk.
I just wanted to say really quickly, I can't emphasize enough, if you go back to the other slide, Amanda, I can't emphasize enough about what she just said, creating a culture of retention. Really, your best recruitment strategy is retention. I want you to really think about that. I'm going to say it again. Your best recruitment strategy is retention. And what does it take in order to become better at retention? Stronger leadership. Your leaders who are in those positions right now in your organizations are, whether they like it or not, whether they're prepared to do it or not, which statistically, as we went through all those previous statistics, the vast majority of your managers are not prepared. They need to level up. They need to step it up. They need to be, superb at their level of emotional intelligence. They need to be superb at problem solving, relationship building, coaching. Those are skills that 99% of the time are not what got them into the role they're in. Why did they get into the role they're in? For reasons such as they've been there the longest amount of time. They were really good at performing their job, right? Let's be honest, that's why a lot of times we promote people into positions. What are you doing? This is a rhetorical question that I want you to think about. What are you doing to prepare and invest in the people who are in those leadership roles to make sure they are poised to create that culture of retention? Because I promise you, statistically speaking, even though I don't know everyone on this call, or I don't know what's going on in your organizations, but I do know statistically, the vast majority of your organizations and the vast majority of your leaders are not equipped. So, and as we know, they're primed for the picking in terms of your employees having other options. So I just wanted to emphasize that point, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you. That's an excellent point. Okay, so enough of the doom and gloom. We've spent enough time in cloudy land for today. So the good news is that there are things that you can do about all of this. So I'm going to, over the next few slides, share some tactics, some general concepts, things that you can be doing and taking a look at right away within your organization to try to make some positive changes. And I will just say again that over the next 2 sessions, we're going to dig a lot deeper into these areas and give you even more tactics and things that you can do to help alleviate some of these challenges. And again, I think it's important to mention none of this is going to be a magic wand, a snap your fingers overnight fix, right? This is going to take time. It's going to take effort. And so there are things that you can do in the meantime to as I heard in a presentation with Tim Sackett the other day, he said, there are things you can do to stop the bleeding for right now, and that will at least help you from a retention perspective so you're not losing more employees. But all of this stuff takes time. And so I think that's an important caveat to mention. But so what can we do about it? Okay, so candidates these days are looking for, among other things, these 4 points that I have up on the screen. They're looking for a genuine connection. They want to feel that the organization's mission, vision, values, and culture, and that includes diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, aligns with their beliefs. They want opportunities to interact and form relationships with their fellow team members. They want to feel encouraged to really participate in the organization outside of just coming in the morning, sitting at a desk and doing the things that are listed in their job description, as a bulleted list. Okay, I'm checking the boxes of doing these things. They're looking for, that genuine connection. Transparency. They want to work for a company that prioritizes open, honest, and frequent communication. And I have this a little bit later in the presentation, but again, going to the SHRM conference in April, one of the presenters stressed the importance of transparency as it relates to pay, purpose, and pathways. And so that means transparency on not just pay, alliteration, we were looking for 3 Ps, but it goes beyond just pay to benefits. Being transparent about, what their options are, and taking a look at, based on the employees that I have within my organization, are the benefits that I'm offering really in line with what they're looking for? So involving them in that conversation, that process. Purpose, not just the purpose of them as an individual contributor within the organization, but bigger picture, how are you contributing to the overall success of the organization as an individual, but also your department? And then having an understanding too of how everybody else in the organization contributes to the overall success. And then pathways, which is looking at potential pathways within the organization as it relates to additional responsibilities, promotion opportunities. And this presenter, her name's Lorna Hagen, she talked about, the fact that not all pathways necessarily have to go up. sometimes it's a matter of, as people have gone through this great reassessment, they're looking at, I've been an accountant forever and I don't think I want to be an accountant anymore. I want to go do something else. And so having those open and honest, transparent conversations with them to get to the heart of, well, what do you want to do? Let's work together and figure that out. Adaptability is another area, allowing candidates to be more active in the hiring process, allowing flexibility with tools, communication, timing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in just a couple slides. And then candidate well-being, of course, having support for the mental health struggles that they may be going through, the physical health struggles that they may be going through. Just understanding that the pandemic put a lot of additional stress on everybody. And so they're coming back to a work environment where it's probably short-staffed. They have a manager who's stressed out. There's an executive leadership team that's stressed out. And so that's a really heavy environment to be involved in if you think about it, right? So how are you providing support services to your team and giving them the space to process that stress and deal with it in a healthy way? Additionally, what is your candidate philosophy? That same presenter I mentioned, Lorna Hagen, she owns a company called Guild Education, which I highly recommend you following her on LinkedIn. She shares a lot of great content. But she talked about, what is your candidate philosophy? You have a philosophy for your customers, for your clients, how your customers and clients are treated on behalf of your organization. Why don't you have something like that for your team members? What are your standards for how people are treated? What are the non-negotiables that you say every single person in this organization must be treated according to XYZ? And how does that tie in with your mission, vision, and values? Because again, everything should always go back to that mission, vision, values. So thinking about, we are actually decision associates. We're in the process of hiring an intern for our talent and organizational performance practice. And so one of the things that we talked through during our staff meeting on Monday was, what's our philosophy for this intern? And we talked about one of our favorite words, intention, and making sure that everything that we're asking this intern to do is intentional. They're not going to be getting coffee. They're not going to be making copies. They're working very closely with me as their supervisor on how we promote the services that exist within our practice area. And also communication. That's another really important keystone for us at Decision Associates, is consistent communication. We are in communication constantly, whether it's in person, popping into each other's offices, whether it's via phone or Zoom. Everybody knows what's going on in the business at all times. And so it's important for us to continue that philosophy with our intern. So just giving some thought to that. Conducting a recruitment SWOT analysis. Again, another marketing concept that I think carries a lot of value from an employer perspective. How do you measure up? And thinking from a retention perspective, really, as well, recruitment and retention SWOT, looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you're aware of kind of where you currently sit as it relates to recruitment and retention. And then you're more easily able to identify what are the areas that aren't working and that need to be addressed immediately. You also need to understand what's being said about your organization right now. If you haven't jumped on Indeed or Glassdoor or even Google to look to see what reviews have been left about your organization by previous or even current employees, that's a mistake. There is a conversation going on out there about your organization. I promise you there is. Are you participating in it? And do you know what's being said?
And it's not just current or past employees, candidates are weighing in as well. Talking about, don't bother applying there, they'll never get back to you, or I was treated so rudely, I had to wait forever.
Yep.
Things like that are being said about your organization. So make sure that it's the right things being said.
Yep. You've got to know what it is. So what else can we do? You need to be putting time, effort, and money into your employer brand. Are you practicing what you're advertising? Because it's important to remember that you could spend all the money in the world advertising what a great place you are to work, but then when the candidate actually gets into the organization and starts working there and they realize that, oh, this was just, pretty packaging on a really terrible culture, they're going to leave. So now you're going to spend even more money to try to replace somebody who was only there for maybe a couple months or shorter. So I like to think of it as fuel or friction. Are you giving your team fuel to help promote your employee brand? Meaning, are you providing them with the messaging that you want them to be sharing? And generally speaking, they need to have some freedom over how they put it into their own voice and make it feel authentic. Are you giving them access to, files of photos that they can share, logo files if they want to, include that in some of their posting or communication to people they know? Are you giving them the tools that they need to help you promote what a great organization you have? Or are you throwing up barriers? Are you providing friction? Are you trying to control too much what they're saying? Are you not giving them any access to, additional information that could be helpful as they try to help you promote open positions and promote the organization? You also need to revamp your job postings. I'm sure you've all seen job postings that you read them and you think, "Why? I wouldn't want to do this job. Why would they advertise this job? It sounds awful." There is a formula, and we're going to share it in the next session, that helps you kind of break down a more effective job posting. And it focuses less on requirements and, kind of the nuts and bolts, and speaks more to the overall experience and opportunities that exist within your organization. Because again, if you think about the type of employee that you want coming into your organization, do you want somebody who's going to come in and just sit there and check boxes? Or do you want somebody who's going to take a greater interest in the organization, make sure the boxes are checked, but also think a little bit bigger picture, and how can what I'm doing as an employee help the organization overall? Can I go a little bit further? Can I go the extra mile? And also thinking about opportunities for their own personal growth, because if your employees are developing professionally and personally by working for your organization, they're going to be less likely to leave. So that also feeds into that third point there, reassessing your job requirements. I think if there was one big takeaway from the SHRM Talent Conference this year for me, it was, why are you requiring a college education for jobs that really, a college education is nice, but it's definitely not required. You are eliminating a huge portion of people who could be very well qualified to do the job, but just because they don't have a college degree, they're automatically discounted. Now, I understand that there are some jobs where, particularly in the healthcare field, where a medical degree is very important. However, by and large, a lot of the jobs that you're hiring for, those particular degrees or certifications may not actually be necessary. So I would encourage you to have a talk, some brainstorming sessions, and really think through, what are the absolute minimum requirements that somebody would need for this job, and promoting that instead of saying, oh, you have to have a degree in this particular program. Additionally, looking internally, are there responsibilities that could be assigned differently or offloaded to other departments or teams? And where this is coming from is, again, another presentation that I attended at SHRM Talent. And so, as I've mentioned, I think hopefully I drove that point home, that we are in the middle of, and it's not going to end anytime soon, a labor crisis. And so with fewer bodies to fill open positions, we're going to have to look at how those responsibilities and how those functions are divvied up within the organization. So if you've got, 4 positions on a particular team and one of them is currently vacant, so the 3 other people on the team are at max capacity, can you look at offloading some of those existing responsibilities that have them at max capacity to somebody else or to another department, and bringing through the responsibilities of that 4th open position and divvying those among the 3 remaining team members? So then maybe you don't need to hire a 4th person. Organizations are going to have to start doing this en masse, again, because there just aren't going to be enough people to fill the open positions. So you need to think about, how can we be reassigning responsibilities and also providing additional training. So if maybe this person doesn't have the capability to take it on right now, but with some training, could they? Is that something that we can, work toward? You also need to secret shop your careers page and your job openings. Send someone through the process to determine Is it easy to figure out how to apply? How long does the application process take? If you're asking for more than must-haves, name, email, phone number, resume, you're going to lose applicants. I'm sure we've all applied for jobs where they have you upload your resume, but then they also have you enter every single piece of your job experience, and it takes like 40 minutes to apply for a job. Forget it. They're not going to stick around. They're not going to apply. So you need to assess that process and have somebody actually go through it start to finish so they can report back on what their experience was and where there's going to be roadblocks. Using easy apply options wherever possible. A lot of technology platforms now offer an option to apply with their LinkedIn profile or other social media profiles. And so I would encourage you to look at those options just to streamline your application process. Because the thing is, you can always ask for more information later. If you really like a candidate based on what you're seeing via their LinkedIn profile or resume, you can ask them to submit more information after the fact. That's perfectly fine. You also need to streamline your hiring process, eliminating unnecessary steps. You know, is it necessary for them to have an hour-long conversation with each member of the team? Probably not. How can we condense that, make it, you know, one meeting with everybody on the team where it's kind of a meet and greet, a little more informal, conversational, looking at your entire interviewing process and determining where you can condense things. This slide is probably the most important one in the entire deck. Communication. I cannot stress this enough. Elizabeth knows, and it's one of the things that I've shared with her that's a top priority of mine since I started at Decision Associates, set and manage expectations. People want to know, I've applied for this job, now what? I'm sure we've all had the experience where you've applied for a job and then you hear nothing for days, weeks, sometimes months. There's a statistic there on the slide from HRU Technical Resources. Only 16% of candidates that they surveyed said that they were informed when a position they'd applied for had been filled. 16%. That is not okay. You need to be in constant communication with your candidates. And this is something that DA, we really pride ourselves in. And that's something that we see as a differentiator for the work that we do. And it's something we constantly receive feedback from our candidates, our clients too, but more importantly, the candidates, is that, you know, I never felt like I didn't know what was going on. I've received personalized communication, even if it was a no, thank you, you know, thanks for applying, but we're going to pass. Even those communication emails, calls are very personalized. We're specific about why a candidate wasn't selected. And we are often in a position where we can provide some guidance too. You know, hey, this was one thing you did in the interview or did as part of the process, and here's how you could improve that in the future. Additionally, this concept of no black holes. You're not letting more than 24 hours go by when somebody applies for a position. You've at least sent them a communication that says, thanks so much for applying. We've received your application. We'll be in touch, and give a specific time frame. We'll be in touch within the next 24 hours, 48 hours. I wouldn't make it longer than that. You need to keep them moving through the process, one, because time is of the essence right now, but also because it's the right thing to do. It's just common courtesy. Keeping them informed about their status as a candidate as they progress. And you can use technology to help you do this. We use an applicant tracking system that allows us to send direct messages to candidates throughout the process. Keeps it really easy. All we have to do, we put in a template, we add a couple of lines about, you know, that customizes it some, and off it goes. It takes less than 5 minutes. You also need to be clear about the next steps in the interview process, and that needs to be reiterated at every step in the process. When a candidate interviews with us, from the very first phone screening all the way through the final interview, at the end of each interview, they get a summary of, okay, so here's where we are in the process, and now here's what's next. Set and manage expectations. People need to know what's going on. They don't like being left in the dark, and as soon as you leave them in the dark, they're going to leave you. Additionally, looking at employing technology to help automate the steps in the process, like I just mentioned, I've listed a few applicant tracking systems there. Workable is the one that we use. So obviously we have the most experience with that. Happy to talk offline with anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more about that. And then those other platforms are ones that I looked into as well. I tried to keep these more on the budget friendly end of the spectrum, but there are tons and tons more applicant tracking systems on the market. I would encourage you to do your own research if you don't have one yet. And like I said, I'm happy to talk with any of you about Workable if you'd be interested. Management for retention. As I said, we are going to spend a lot of time on that in session 3. Elizabeth's going to be walking through the management toolkit and actually providing it to you. So I would encourage you to stay tuned for that. Carrying your employer brand beyond new hires and delivering on it. Like I said, if you're bringing somebody into the organization based on promises you made in your advertising, and then you're not delivering on it, they're not going to stick around. Developing and revamping your pre-boarding, onboarding, and offboarding processes. There needs to be a consistency there with your employer brand. And if any of you attended the sessions that we presented back in November, I talked a lot about this, where it's, even if you think of offboarding, okay, this person's leaving my organization, I don't need to do anything related to, keeping up appearances as it relates to my employer brand. You do, because if that separation is amicable and that person is looking for another position in the future, boomerang employees, that's a thing. So don't burn a bridge if it's, especially if it's an employee that you are interested in, hey, if you want to come back at some point, the door's always open. Don't burn that bridge. So carrying that employer brand through every single interaction, including when they leave the organization, is incredibly important. So in our last few minutes here, and I want to make sure we have a little time for additional questions, just to wrap up some key points. So through this presentation, we've identified the fact that you don't just need better recruitment, you actually need better recruitment, retention, strategy, leadership, and technology. So when we say, better recruitment, adopting the mindset that this is not just human resources, this is everyone. Every single person in the organization has some kind of impact on recruitment. And so you need to acknowledge that and then also equip them to be more successful in helping with those efforts. Retention, again, it's a whole organization issue. It's not just human resources. Are you giving fuel versus friction? Are you practicing what you preach in your employer brand? And are you delivering on those promises? Are you, from a strategy perspective, creating something that's comprehensive and includes employer branding, value proposition, all of those kind of soup to nuts approach in your strategy? And are you creating a strategy that's able to be agile and adapt? As things change in the job market, your strategy needs to change too. Leadership. Are you providing leadership training to your managers? Are you empowering them to be true leaders and true mentors and guides for their team members? And then technology. Are you automating steps in the process to take some of that burden off of your recruitment team, letting them focus on finding quality candidates and engaging them at a deeper level during the interview process? They should not be worrying about, oh, did this person get a timely follow-up email? Did they, who do we have at what stages in the pipeline? There are technology platforms that can manage all of that very easily for them. Again, remembering that it's not just the Great Resignation, it's also the Great Reassessment. How are you giving your employees the space to reassess what they want out of their work? And how are you participating? You can give them the space, but you also need to participate, because if you just give them the space without participating, they're probably going to leave. You need to take an interest in really spending the time to help them go through that reassessment process and say, okay, as your manager, how can I help you accomplish these goals? Again, transparency on pay, purpose, and pathways. We talked about that. Up not being the only direction, looking at lots of different development opportunities. And again, that management toolkit in session 3 is going to help you do that. Looking at screening in versus screening out. So instead of weeding out your applicants based on them not meeting job criteria, look at it from a bigger picture. Look at it from the lens of where else in the organization could they be a fit? So just because they aren't maybe a fit for this particular job, could you use them somewhere else in the organization? And also rethinking the qualifications and the skills that are necessary for completing the jobs. And I would suggest that you look at lessening those a bit. So real quick, we do have the $100 gas card drawing, which I'm going to draw here in just a second. I do want to get to some Q&A, but I also wanted to put contact information for Elizabeth and I up on the screen. So if you have questions about today's presentation, please don't hesitate to contact either one of us. Same thing with the subsequent 2 presentations. We are here to help you. So we're happy to answer any questions that you have, talk through challenges, you know, whatever we can do to help you through all of these challenges that you're facing. That's what we want to do. So before we get to questions, I'm just going to very quickly stop sharing my screen. And if you would, we're going to simultaneously take questions, and I'm also going to put a poll up on the screen. It's just 2 questions, so if you could please answer the poll questions, we'll do that. And then in the meantime, if any of you have questions, feel free to unmute, raise your hand, drop them in the chat, whatever you'd like to do. Any questions?
And of course, you know, in the interest of time, recognizing that Amanda put a lot of great work into giving you a significant amount of information, which I can tell from your positive comments in the chat box that you appreciate. Feel free to text us, call us, email us. You know, I'll drop our contact information in the chat again, or actually Amanda can send that out in the follow-up communication. But, you know, feel free to reach out if you have any questions or even just want to run something by us.
Melissa, go ahead.
Hi. Are you going to give examples of like the talent acquisition strategy, like what one looks like? Is that like in a later session?
I can do that. Yes,
Okay.
I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, that would be, because sometimes I wonder, you know, we have some things set in place, but what is like a really good one look like, and what are we already doing, and what could we add to it? So that would be helpful.
Sure. I can do
Thanks.
that. Thank you. All right.